What is up, YouTube? We are back with episode 10 of the 5D Warrior podcast. Episode 10, man. We're moving and grooving, getting active,
I feel like
staying
we've done
in
a million
motion.
episodes.
I know we have done a bunch, and we are on TikTok now. If you're watching, check us out on TikTok, 5D_Warriors, and check us out on
And
Instagram,
Instagram,
5D_Warriors.
We got we post some conscious memes on there.
Conscious memes, right?
My Klaus Schwab meme didn't blow up. I'm kind of butthurt.
Unfortunately, maybe we'll have to throw it on the talk.
It should have blown up. Yeah, put it on the talk. That shit was funny.
We could put it on the talk. All right, so today I kind of want to dive into David R. Hawkins. He's got a couple good books, and the one that really sticks out to me is Power versus Force.
That's like his OG book.
That's his OG book. That's the first one he did, where he did the kinesiology, which is muscle testing. It's basically like the ultimate truth, the lie detector, right? Here, I'm going to share my screen right now with, okay, so the premise is that everything that has occurred or lived, from events to people to facts, etc., can all be calibrated in a relative level of truth, not as compared to falsity, which doesn't actually exist, or negatively either, as that's a myth as well, but in relative level of truth. So what he explains is how negativity doesn't exist. It's just a lack of positivity, right? So thinking optimistically towards everything. And he talks about how the muscle testing here, I'll show you, I'll demonstrate a video of it right here.
Dope video. You can't hear it.
So can you hear it?
I can't.
You can't? All right, you don't really need to hear it. I'll explain what he's doing. So what he's doing right now is he's doing the kinesiology muscle test on this young girl who doesn't even know what he's testing. So
yeah,
I'll explain what he's testing. Here, let me see. He's talking about meditation, raising a person's consciousness. If it is, resist. And if that statement that he utters vibrates in truth, then the arm stays strong. But if he utters it and it doesn't reign in truth, then the arm goes down easily, which it sounds like a crazy premise. But if you read the book and kind of understand where that comes from, it actually has to do with the strength of your muscles relating to positive and negative emotions and positive and negative truths that emanate in the universe, because everything has happened, everything will happen. So basically you're just tapping into that ether of space-time.
Is the little girl a liar?
He said what?
Is the little girl a liar?
No. At least in my opinion, no. He just said if reading the book Power versus Force raises your consciousness 20 points, resist. So what he's essentially saying is, by reading his book and understanding the nature of truth and falsehood, you can raise your consciousness level by 20 points. So I mean, we don't need to finish this video because I know
and pull up the sound. This shit.
So this is the consciousness scale developed by David R. Hawkins. Here, let me open a new tab. Open image in new tab. Here we go. All right, so you can see that it's based from 0 to 1,000, 0 being the lowest and 1,000 being the highest. So you have the lower level emotions, which you can see, and the lower level emotions are that going up to 200. And this scale goes in an grows exponentially, right? So think about it like a seismic scale of the earthquakes. So if you have an earthquake that's magnitude 2 opposed to magnitude 3, that magnitude 3 earthquake is 10 times greater than that magnitude 2 earthquake. So that's how it's growing that way, right? It's logarithmic.
Yeah.
And so the worst 3 emotions to be vibrating in are shame, guilt, and apathy. And that's simply because you're just self-hating, right? It's almost as if you are selfish in those emotions because you're not understanding like the true nature of yourself, right? And
because you're fully feeling those emotions, like whatever you did to feel those emotions, like you're solely just like feeling them because like you're just basing all reality on yourself, essentially. yourself.
Exactly. So acting as if you're the only one who exists in this reality is why you would be vibrating so low.
Yeah, and we
right?
all feel those emotions, and like we're not saying it's not okay to feel any of these emotions. Like
Mhm.
even like the highest of vibrational people can like still feel these emotions. Like essentially, it's all just part of the 3D life. Like if it wasn't, we need these emotions to experience the polarity of our existence,
Yeah.
right? So like you can vibrate 99% of the time at these higher levels, which like that's the goal, right? But like it's not saying these are bad because nothing is good or bad, right?
Right.
It's just to
Is.
try to stay higher up on the chart,
So
a little
so
more better optimal
as we
life.
move up, you see desire, fear, and grief, right? And these are ones focused on by the monks, right? When they're purging themselves, they're getting rid of desire, right? They don't succumb to sexual temptations or addictions or anything like that. And that desire is right. It seems good in the moment, like, oh, I want to have a cigarette right now. But then when you don't have that cigarette, you feel a sense of lack,
That's
which is
actually,
disconnect, which is selfish towards yourself.
yeah, I never even realized that desire is like lower on the chart than like anger,
Hmm.
essentially. I mean,
Yeah.
they're obviously very close, but
Yeah. And then you have
that
fear
desire
there too.
is essentially worse because, like you said, it's like it's aligned with the emotional state of craving, and like the view of life is just like disappointing because it's like you desire something and like if you can't have it, you're craving something, you can't have it, and then you're just like left in disappointment because like you can't have it, and like
Precisely.
you can't always have what you desire. Like I desire to be rich. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm
If you
not
don't
rich.
have desires, you have all, right? And we talk about
Yeah,
the law of attraction. And the
and then
one
we
thing that
kind of,
doesn't coincide with the law of attraction is having that desire, because desire doesn't attract.
yeah,
If you're talking to a
um,
girl and you're like, oh my God, like I want you so bad, like that comes off as needy and begging rather than playing it cool, right? That's why girls like assholes, right?
yeah, exactly. That's
That's the
like
exact premise.
because like I was watching the Netflix show Too Hot to Handle. Don't make fun of me with reality TV, but like the prettiest girl on the show, right? Like all the guys are just like throwing themselves at her, right? And she's always like, oh, like that, like icks me out or like creeps me out and gives her just like a bad vibe. When
Mhm.
like the guys are like after like the first day of meeting her, they're like, I'm in love with you, essentially, like you're the best I've ever seen, like best most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And it's just like, bro, like if you had a little bit of emotional intelligence or you were conscious just a little bit, like wouldn't you realize that like
Mhm.
literally every guy she's ever come encounter with has thrown themselves at her. So like she likes like the bad boy quote or like the guy that doesn't show her that attention because she's so used to getting that
Mhm.
validation and shit. She almost doesn't want it. So that's like the law of attraction essentially is like if you don't want something badly enough, if you don't want it, it'll essentially come into play. It's
Precisely.
like we all want riches, we all want whatever we want, but like if you desire it, it's never gonna happen.
If you
If
think
you
it's
just
done
accept
already.
that you may never get it, it'll probably be more likely to come to you.
Even if you don't have it, if you think it's done already, it will come to you, right? And that goes all right. So that brings us up to anger, pride, courage, right? Courage is where the script flips, right? 200 is the point where you stop vibrating at the lower levels of emotion. You start vibrating at higher levels of emotion. That's why it's get yellow to green, right? And these all correspond with the chakras. I'll mention
Yep.
the colors, like 7 chakras, the 7 colors in the prism, the 7 densities of consciousness, the 7 musical notes. It all corresponds with one another. But so the red emotions are the root chakra. The orange emotions are that of the sacral chakra, or yeah, the sacral chakra. The
Yeah, yeah.
yellow ones are the solar plexus chakra. So this is before you reach the heart chakra,
So
which
these
is
are
where
like
you,
just to explain where they're at,
yeah,
essentially. The
exactly.
root
So where
chakra
you,
is at like the bottom of your spine,
mm-hmm,
and then the sacral is like right around your like pelvic region, and then the solar plexus is kind of in like your stomach
mm-hmm,
area, and then
mm-hmm,
all the way up to your heart,
yeah,
third throat, third eye, and
mm-hmm.
essentially your crown.
Yep. So
But
courage is the bridge to the higher levels of emotions, right? The higher levels of consciousness. And that courage comes because you're putting yourself behind others, right? You're putting yourself. Think about a courageous
Yeah, so
military hero. He put his life on the line to save others. That's where the script flips, right?
I have a good like little thing about courage, right? I learned this in my business ethics class. So like there's this guy named what's his name? Maybe he doesn't have a name. It's just a theory, right? But it's the theory that the state of character, the golden mean, right, is the state of character that lies between two characteristics such as excess and deficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And none of these are based on passions, or they're all based on reason and logic, right? But so what is that? What essentially that is saying is that the best like man or the best person lies between the most like extreme emotion and the most like the lowest vibe emotion, right? And courage is that middle ground between cowardice and rashness, right? So like the courage is like what everyone wants, because like Jordan B. Peterson says this as well. Like it's almost like you want to be a monster, right? But you want to learn how to control it. And that's like also what Bruce Lee says, like you want to be a warrior in a garden, not a gardener in a war, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to learn how to control
Exactly.
you want to be dangerous, but you want to learn how to control that danger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the courage comes in.
Yeah. So that courage is the bridge to the higher emotions, right? And then you have neutrality, willingness, acceptance, and acceptance and forgiveness, right? Forgiveness is the emotional state associated with it, which is a very powerful tool. We talked about in the last podcast about how forgiveness and acceptance of the past can actually lift you up out of those bottom three emotions.
Get addicted to forgiveness.
Get addicted to forgiveness. And
if you're gonna get addicted to anything, get addicted. We might as well throw an "een" at the end of that forgiveness. Forgiveness-een.
So think about it like this. So when you start doing that shadow work and going in and cleansing those lower three chakras, because all those memories that you have that are associated with negative emotions, negative feelings, low vibrational feelings, they get stuck there and they emanate, but they're existing only in the subconscious mind. You're not thinking about it every day, but those things that have happened to you shape who you are.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, that correlates with like actual science essentially, because it's like, you ever heard of epigenetics, right? It's like what epigenetics is. It's how your environment and behaviors actually have a play on your genetics, right? And like it doesn't change the way your body reads your DNA, but it essentially can change your DNA. So like when like these people talk about like all of your ancestors for thousands of years, all of their feelings and emotions and thoughts is quite literally like ingrained in your DNA. Like it is, and it all has a play on your emotion or your behaviors and your environment. So like if you're in a low vibe environment, you're most likely only gonna act out low vibe behaviors, and then your DNA is gonna be changed to only reside in these lower levels of consciousness, right? But if you go and live in a place like Sedona, Arizona, like a high vibe place, and you're always acting like with highly conscious
interacting
thought,
with other high vibe people as well.
yeah, you're gonna essentially you have the power to change your DNA for the better, essentially. And that's the study of epigenetics.
So those lower three emotions, like you brought up the epigenetics, those lower emotions, you can cleanse that through shadow work and therapy and subconscious, going into that subconscious mind. But the problem is people say you have blockages in the lower three chakras, right? Those come from the subconscious mind holding those thoughts, those negative thoughts, negative emotions. That subconscious mind holds them somewhere and they have to exist somewhere. And if you don't face them with the forgiveness and acceptance that is harmonious in the universe, then you can never rise above them, right? So you can't have blockages in your upper three chakras. As soon as you open up your heart chakra, then you can't have blockages in the crown chakra or the third eye chakra, because those are enlightenment, peace, joy, love, reason, right? You can't block it off from those emotions. Only the low emotions can block the higher emotions from pouring in.
Yeah. And essentially, yeah, no, that makes sense. And essentially, like when you sit in like meditation and start doing breath work and you're conscious of your breath, because that's all like what meditation is essentially, you automatically drop all these low vibrations, and then you're just sitting at neutrality, right? You're just present, you're present of your breath, so you're present in the moment, and you're just trusting that moment, and you're satisfied with that moment. And then with that neutrality, you're just being essentially. That's when you could think about these lower vibration emotions, right? But like Corey said, like do the shadow work on them. Like you're not residing in your body isn't vibrating at these lower levels, but like you obviously have to be conscious of them and think about them to let them go. But ultimately doing all that is just raising your willingness to accept these low vibes, and then go all the way up to loving yourself, and then being joyful that like you cleansed all these negative vibes about yourself, and then you get all the way to the top of peace and enlightenment, because like you fully cleanse yourself of all of these lower levels of emotion, and you're just sitting in bliss.
So think of the low, or not the lower emotions, but think of your vibration as an average of your state of being. So you could wake up in the morning and you hate waking up and getting out of bed, and that's gonna lower your vibration. But then you go to work and you get a coffee and you're getting uplifted. You have a good conversation with a coworker and you're uplifting yourself, and then your boss calls you in and yells at you and you get pissed off, and then it's lowering your vibration, right? Think about it like this. Every day your vibration is going up and down. It's not steady level. It's
extremely
just
hard to
exactly. It's the average.
Like I said before, you need those lower, you need that polarity, because like exactly like your boss said, or like we just said, your boss yells at you or something, and you automatically go and say you start residing at anger, right? You're having a good day. Say you're loving that day. You're at 500. Then all of a sudden you get angry and you drop 400 points, or 350 points. But that's like you need that drop to essentially raise your vibration even more, because like you have to accept those emotions, right? And like we always talk about, your thoughts and emotions are separate from yourself, right? So like even if you get angry, right, or you get in like any of these low vibe feelings of state, right, you just like accept them and just let them be, and just like take a step back from them and be like, okay, like I'm not actually feeling this right now. I'm just gonna let it be. We talk about the raw energy, like those are obviously low vibe states of consciousness, and they would make you feel like you're low energy, right? But like all energy is just raw energy. So turn those low, be okay with that energy, just let it sit, and then eventually change it to be positive.
Bring it up to the positive energy. Energy
Bring it
always,
up to scale.
and if you're holding that energy, you can hold it negatively, but then just transform it to the positive energy through acceptance and forgiveness. That's why I said get addicted to forgiveness, right?
Yeah, pull up. It's like, I don't know how to explain it. Like it's like the picture of all the body types, right? And like you can see where these levels of emotion like actually vibrate throughout the body. I'm pretty sure Aubrey Marcus posted it.
I know the diagram you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just like I think it might be like 8 or 10 bodies, and it's just like it shows the energy. Yeah, that shit.
So here, let me
Blow
pull it
that
up in
up.
a new tab.
Yeah.
So this shows where you're actually feeling these emotions. So when you feel angry, you're feeling hot in the head.
And this is 100% like, now that you see this, like next time you're like conscious of like your emotions, like think about like where you actually are feeling this emotion, and like this is like 100% fact. Like,
and then look at happiness on here. You're seeing it's radiating light. Like you are light, and when you're living in that high vibe state, you are a light being radiating light, and that's why these lower emotions,
like even love. Look at love.
Love right there, radiating. You could still be in love but not be happy. That's why happiness is.
Or like shame, you just feel it all in your chest, like the rest of your body's just shut off essentially, and you're just like sad, or anxiety, like it's just your heart starts racing really fast. That's why you feel it in that.
So let's move up to joy, love, and reason now. And so those are when you get past that heart chakra and you start seeing the oneness and the awareness within everyone as you and yourself, and seeing the world as a reflection, and not judging, right? A world of without judgment. Judgment is a low vibrational action, right? Judging other people. So they say, Ra says in the Law of One, that you need to vibrate at 500, which is that of love, to ascend to that fourth density of consciousness, which makes sense, because if you were to vibrate in the lower emotions than love, you could still go into the positive, the negative polarity, right? You could still feed into those negative emotions, and still pick the negative path.
Oh my fuck.
What happened?
Charger keeps fucking coming out.
It's all right.
Whatever. I don't but yeah, like you just said, Ross says to resonate. Oh my fuck. I'm getting fucked by this fucking chair right now. It just keeps going up and down. My fault. But
good.
Ross says to resonate at love, right? To get harvested. That's a whole nother topic for another day. Your soul gets harvested into the next dimensions, right? Like we're not all gonna make it essentially to the next density after this when we die or when we pass on. But the way he says to, or they say to start resonating at love, is to give 51% of yourself to service of others and 49% of your like time to service of self, right? So like it's only a 2% difference, but that 2% difference in what you're giving out is massive, right? So like 51% of your thoughts and emotions, and if you give that on to others, like that's very high vibe. That's acting
in love. If you're giving more than you're receiving, then you're acting in love. And that's another thing, away from the love, but more into the meditation aspect of it. So if you can go into deep states of meditation every day, I try and meditate for around an hour a day. I try and do 2 30-minute sessions of meditation, one in the morning and one at night. And if I can spend an hour of day sitting in peace, right? Peace, love, joy, peace. If I could spend an hour of my day just absorbing those emotions, then that ultimately just keeps raising my vibration and stacking up and stacking up.
And it's really not hard to do that.
No, it's not hard at all, because you kind of fall in love with it at a point, because normal
I'm sure that's the best time of your day.
So mundane compared to accessing those high states of being. You feel your third eye radiating, and you feel you don't even connect with your body anymore. You just simply are.
Is that the best times of your day?
The best times of my day, I would say personally, are when I'm doing breath work or going in the cold shower and the ice tub. Like I got out of the ice tub, did a 15-minute ice bath, submerged up to my neck today. Like those are the most peaceful times of day, at least for me, because I'm just consciously raising my vibration. I'm surrendering. And when you can surrender and raise your vibration, then you ultimately allow yourself and open yourself up to helping others, which is how you vibrate in love, joy, peace. And then we're up to enlightenment now. We just talked about peace and how you can access that states of peace through meditation. Enlightenment.
And think about, my bad.
No, go ahead.
Think about like, how do you reach these higher levels, right? And like we said, like you gotta be 51% service to others. You gotta give more than you receive, right? But think of all the people who are successful in life. They're all the biggest philanthropists. Like they're all giving more. They're making millions and shit, or billions, but like they're giving just as much away as they're bringing in, right? And it's almost essentially like, how do you get to these higher levels? Also, it's by letting go. So like letting go of all those bad negative emotions, letting go of your money, or essentially just letting go. And by letting go of all this stuff, like you raise your vibration.
Precisely. So that takes us up to enlightenment now. And when you think about enlightenment, the first two people that come to my mind are Jesus and Siddhartha Gautama, which is the Buddha, right? Okay. Jesus, Yeshua, and the Buddha. And those two people come to my mind because they obtained such an amount of self-knowledge that they saw the world as themselves, and that understanding that all is one, all is one. They see the trees and they see a reflection of themselves, and they see the ocean and the waves crash and they see a reflection of themselves. When you can see yourself and everything is when you start to understand that life is, which is that of enlightenment, right? And you can have temporary bursts of enlightenment, right? Think about different ways that people do that. Some people go and they take ayahuasca in the rainforest with a shaman, and they see the order of life and how life is and how they are the trees and they are the rainforest. But that fleets out of time because it's only temporary, right?
It's
Um,
induced.
it's
Induced.
artificially induced.
Yeah.
Not that it's not a natural means of attaining it, but it's artificial in your
Yeah.
mind. When you can obtain that all the
Naturally.
time naturally,
Well, it is
is
natural, but
it is natural,
it's
yeah,
still, like you
but
said,
mhm,
artificial in the sense that
exactly,
you have to
exactly.
take it to reach those states.
And that's why people take drugs to get those temporary bursts of enlightenment. Think about it
Chase
like a
the
euphoric
drag.
sensation. People smoke pot every day because they want to feel they're vibrating down in the low levels of emotions, and they say, "Oh, this pot's a pick me up," right? Because maybe I don't know exactly what pot would vibrate at, but it picks them up, and they're like, "Oh, like this will pick me up for the day." But meanwhile, if somebody who's vibrating in love and reason, it's like, oh, I'm going to smoke some pot today, it might lower their vibration because they're already so high on life.
Yeah,
Um,
they don't need it.
they
They
don't,
don't.
yeah,
They don't need
exactly.
it essentially.
Exactly. And
Yeah, any artificial things like weed or like essentially like
alcohol or
yeah,
nicotine.
any of that stuff is like, yeah, you're only doing it to feel better than you already
Hmm.
feel naturally, right? So like when you resonate at these higher vibes, like you let all that shit go because like you don't need it anymore because like you don't need to feel. There's nothing artificial that could essentially make you feel any better than you're already feeling.
You're content with yourself.
People do
And
it for fun, not just there's people obviously that do this stuff for fun, but like the majority where the problem lies is like we said, the people that do it to reach these higher levels of consciousness and be happy for like an hour, right? Or
mhm,
something like that. But then so think about it with the consciousness chart, right? So think of a person, right? That's that desire, right? They're craving that that hit of a blunt, or they're craving that beer, right? And that say that brings them all the way up to love. Just say it definitely doesn't, but say it does. Once that artificial high is over, right? It brings them back down to this level of desire again, maybe even lower, because
mhm.
now you just want it. You just need it again. You were just feeling so high vibe, and now all of a sudden you're back down to where you started, and
Mhm.
that creates the trap of addiction
Habit
and stuff,
forming of habit
habit
forming. You
forming,
see
because like
people
you're like,
getting pot isn't addictive, but
but
the
it is the
feeling that
feeling is.
pot gives you that feeling of high vibration. You get addicted to that feeling. So if you can attain that through natural methods like meditation and breath work and other ways, it's much more natural and organic. And then you can see a light enlightenment. The energetic frequency of enlightenment vibrates from 700 to 1,000, which is interesting. It's the only one that has a range on here,
Hmm.
right? And that is because, like I said before, experiencing those lower emotions will make you dip down into that emotion, into the lower emotions. But when you're vibrating at that high of enlightenment, think of it as a logarithmic function where it just starts to go up super high, right? It's growing.
Exponential.
It's not like that. It's like this, and it grows almost straight up. So if
Yeah.
you're vibrating at
Oh,
900 and something bad happens, like so
so
I don't know, one of your friends gets hurt in a car accident and you're enlightened, they say,
damn.
that wouldn't bring you down as much as it would if you were, it wouldn't bring you down much because you're vibrating so high already, which is
Yeah,
why there's
bring
a
up,
range to it.
pull up how these levels can affect other people. So like if you're vibrating at a certain level of consciousness, you can essentially like awaken that many people, because all things are energy, right? And like we've talked about before, like you have an aura, and your aura, your vibration that you give off, like essentially projects outward. It's right there. It's right there.
What one?
That I'm pretty sure that's
This
it.
one? No.
Oh no, it's not. Look up. It's David R. Hawkins too. Look up. It's the kinesiology chart. Something.
I don't see
Look
it.
up the kinesiology test. David R. Hawkins consciousness and like affecting other people.
Oh, here it is. Right?
No,
No.
nah,
All right.
it's.
We can just vaguely explain it if I can't
I have it on my phone.
find it right now. Oh, here's a good one. You could see as the conscious. This isn't very accurate. But we've been vibrating above 200 now, which is why the lower emotions have been purged in our society per se, right? And that's why we're experiencing kind of turmoil right now with COVID and wars breaking out, and
Yeah, what is that?
and that's those negative power structures kind of breaking out from the earth, because now when the people are waking up to kind of the true nature of themselves and reality, those different power structures that have been ingrained in our earth have to purge themselves.
It's like essentially it is the Matrix, right? And Billy Carson talks about like the holographic illusional universe in the sense that like you can see through it when you raise your vibration. So like someone that's lower level and you talk, someone that's low vibe comes on and listens to our podcast, they'll say, oh, this is fugazi, like this isn't true, blah, blah, blah. But then say that same person starts resonating at higher levels, they'll be like, okay, I understand what these kids are saying, like, and then they'll start seeing it in their everyday lives. You'll be able to project through because it's all an illusion essentially.
And we're not experts in any of this stuff, but we're expressing our best knowledge of what we found, right? And
yeah, we're not
and I think a lot of this stuff that we've found can be used to help people. And even if all this crap just happened to not be true whatsoever, right? Leading your life in love and helping other people more than you help yourself, and focusing on self-love and seeing other people as a reflection of yourself. I don't think any of those are bad messages at the end of the day. And I think
exactly. Like even if this is all fugazi and all the shit we're saying is cap, like there's nothing bad about telling people about or spreading oneness consciousness and telling people that others are an outward manifestation of yourself, because ultimately if you treat everyone in that sense that they're essentially you at the end of the day, like you're acting out of love, you're never going to treat anyone badly.
And the only reason we're sitting here,
a bad message.
No, and the only reason we're sitting here talking about it and trying to raise awareness of this is because we've had experiences that have led us to believe this to be true, and we've experienced it for ourselves, right? Through,
and again, it's all backed up by science, whether you believe
it's all backed up by science. Everything vibrates, right?
Frequency of vibration.
We talked about the 7 hermetic principles. We talked about correspondence, vibration, cause and effect, and among others. And then you hear Nikola Tesla talk about how energy, frequency, vibration are the keys to the universe, and understanding them. And when science begins to study the unseen, how it will make more progress in a decade than it has in the last hundreds of years. It's quite an interesting thing to talk about and understand how consciousness is something that is within every one of us, but we know very little about, or should I say most people know very little about. And the way that you get in touch with that consciousness is through emotional intelligence and awareness of self.
And the whole reason like not a lot of people are connected with it or connected with spirit is because like from the beginning, as soon as you were born, you were thrown into this matrix, right? You were at probably like 3-4 years old, thrown into preschool, then kindergarten at 5, 6, you were thrown into first grade, you went all the way through high school, and you've just been fully indoctrinated into the system to just be a prisoner essentially. And like Billy Carson gives like the metaphor that like everyone in the matrix is the prisoner and the prison guard at the same time, right? So like he uses the example of 9/11. Like you're talking to your friend that's a quote unquote bot, and you bring up 9/11 potentially being an inside job, and they automatically go from the prisoner to the prison guard, and they're like, that can't be true, blah blah blah. They just start dismissing everything you're saying, calling you crazy, this and that, and they literally are protecting the same thing that they're entrapped in. And it's like it's a whole big like psychological warfare going on.
It is. It's psychological warfare and propaganda, and
See, they say
you see what Justin Trudeau is tweeting, like the freedom, the Justin Trudeau here.
he's
Trudeau
tweeting out, I got COVID, I'm positive for COVID, but make sure you get boosted. Like that's a little fugazi if you ask me. Like the dude is double vaxxed up and boosted, and he's still catching COVID. But I thought the whole thing was no one will ever get COVID or be able to spread it once they get the jab. So that's a whole different topic for another day.
So
But
what Justin
Trudeau,
Trudeau, so Justin Trudeau said that the truckers in that freedom rally were anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, racist, homophobic, and transphobic. And which is kind of interesting, because a lot of those people, what are they doing that is doing that? They're following a peaceful protest, carrying gas cans, and he's just afraid. He's part of that negative power structure, and he's afraid of that narrative collapsing. And that's
because he knows at the end of the day, if it comes into fruition, the Great Awakening, he'll be essentially
out of a job,
to be hung in the public square, essentially. But no, all these people are breaking. All these people are breaking the biggest rules on the earth, and essentially the rules of the universe. And it's like
that of free will.
No one deserves. I'm not God, but like, and no one deserves to die. But it's like, what is the penalty for like causing all this pain, right? Like you can give someone the death penalty in some states, and it's like, if it came down to it, like most of these people are that's what they're gonna get when all this stuff comes out.
It's quite interesting, and I think we came here to see it unfold, right? This Great Awakening that we're a part of.
Our soul came here to experience this reality of the Great Awakening.
And I think a lot of people will find that they'll be glad they woke up. It's because a lot of this stuff, when you're understanding all this information, a lot of it is like you're remembering it in a sense, like, oh, this is how I am, rather than this is how I should be. You know what I'm saying? This is how I naturally am. Think about a baby, which is the purest form of awareness.
I was going to get into that. I forgot the indoctrination. Like when you come out of your mother's womb, right? That's the closest to spirit that you've been throughout your entire life. Like you just came from that astral plane, that spirit realm. Like you come into this 3-dimensional world, and then all the things that are put into play to take you away from that. And then that's why, like, if you don't believe me that kids are more connected to spirit than we are, just think about who are the ones in all the Conjuring films, all the horror movies, that are the ones connecting with the spirits and the ghosts, right? Who are the ones being able to see it? And it's the children, because they're essentially way more high vibe than us, because they just came from that, essentially the oneness. They just came from the creator. Like they're
think about the imagination of children. Exactly. Right? They're so much more connected to that like creative realm.
There's like a story of the kids that remember their past lives and shit. Like little kid, you don't remember that shit. Like if it didn't happen to you by now, like it's never gonna happen to you.
Like my sister, I have a crazy story about my sister. We were in Killington, Vermont, when I was very young. I was probably 9 years old, and my sister was probably 2 or 3, and they were sitting in the restaurant in the lobby downstairs, and some woman was sitting with her friend, and she walked up. My sister randomly walked up to this woman, never talking to her before, and said, so-and-so says hi and that he loves you, or something along those lines. And the woman just instantly started crying. And my mom was like, what did you say? What did you say? Like, why did you make her cry? And my sister said, the man in the corner of the room told me to say that to that woman.
That's so not fair.
And my mom was like super shaken up by that. And she didn't even tell me. She told me about that this summer. She never told anybody about, or she told my dad, but she told me about it. And she was like, yeah, like that was super interesting. And like How does that happen? How does that correlate? How does my sister guess that woman's dead husband's name out of the blue, she was talking to the man in the corner of the room, which is just an absurd statement to begin
She
with,
was
and
2
he
to 3
wasn't even
years
there.
old,
2 years
essentially.
old. How does she know that? Which is goes to show, like, that's just one example of, like, kids being connected to a
Spirit.
higher realm of existence, right? And like we
That's
talked
another
about,
thing. It's easier for a kid is way more accepting of a spirit to come and talk to them like that, because like they don't know any better, essentially. Like if me or you, I would accept any spirit that came to talk to me, essentially. But like just people our age, the older you get, the more or the less likely you are to accept that to be true. So like even if something crazy like that did happen to you, you're just gonna dismiss it and say that's not real. There's no one actually
it
connecting
sounds
with me
woo
right
woo
now.
when you start talking about
Yeah.
spirits and ghosts, but I mean, they
I can
exist.
get
If
it
you
from-
if you believe that you're gonna go somewhere after you die, you sure as hell believe in spirits, don't you? And
Exactly. And that's if you don't believe in spirits, then you just believe you don't believe you're an atheist, essentially, if you don't believe in spirit.
I
Because
mean, yeah, in a sense, yeah.
no, it is because like how do you if you don't believe in spirit, then you don't believe in a God, because you just believe you're just gonna die. Because
Mhm.
the only thing keeping us alive is our soul, is our spirit, and that's energy, right? That's light energy, and we know energy can't be created nor destroyed, so it can only be passed on. So
Mhm.
like when we die, our soul or spirit has to get passed on to the next density, or
Next
heaven, or
realm, or
whatever you
whatever
believe in,
you tend to believe
gets
in
passed on to
gets
somewhere
passed on
outside of this physical
somewhere.
reality.
Whatever you want to believe about life after death, I think it goes somewhere, and it's pretty self-evident that it doesn't just end there when you see near-death experiences and people and
Exactly.
what they've seen. Yeah, it's all very, very crazy what goes on in the spirit realm.
Crazy, bro.
Crazy. All right, well, that was our episode 10 of the 5D Warrior podcast, diving into some crazy knowledge about the
Shout out
self and emotional intelligence.
Donovan Brown with these
Shout out Donnie B, man. He's the man. He is the man.
He instilled power into us young men for generations.
He did. He has been.
The
Yeah.
sponsor today is Donovan Brown.
Sponsor today is Donovan Brown. Hopefully we'll have some more sponsors in the near future, right?
We'll get Donnie B on a pod.
We'll get Donnie B in a pod. All right.
Break
Well,
his reality.
thanks. If you made it this far, we appreciate you. And as always, we leave you with, we're watching you, YouTube.
Who should I call it today?
Who should you call it? I don't know, call it somebody. Klaus Schwab. Klaus Schwab.
Nah,
the World
I'll
Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum.
Trudeau. I'm coming for you, Trudeau.
Trudeau. All those young global leaders that went to the World Economic Forum, future leaders conferences that are now world leaders. We're watching all of you.
That's who I'm about to call out.
Who? Yeah, I don't know.
Greta Thunberg, I'm coming for
you. All right. On that note,
that's it.
On that note, there's an infinite amount of people we could call out, but it's not infinite.
Time on this
podcast. So
peace out,
have
guys.
a good one, everybody.